Pollution. Good morning, neighbors. Pollution and exposure versus dose. Now, exposure to something just means that you've seen, you've been near, you've been around, you've been tangent to something and maybe know about it. So, we're talking about chemicals, pollutants in our nature around us. So the next item there, exposure. Are you exposed? How could you be exposed? What are the pathways to this exposure? There's two ways to know you were exposed. Somebody says something about something that happened and you learn about, oh, I drank that water. Now I have a risk, a concern. I've had a dose. But does it mean you've had a dose, or were you just exposed? So this is the challenge with pollution conversations themselves. We can identify, let's get specific, exposure to radiation. We can well identify that event using precise measurements, some very precise measurements. We can go back in time and history and examine and re-examine the events that happened that led to the exposure. But then there's that second word, dose. The only true way to find dosimetry after exposure is estimates. This is what we do a lot. We estimate. Do we have enough cash in the bank to go buy groceries? Or all the groceries? What don't I need? Estimates. So, risk and exposure. These are two key terms. Exposure and dosage. Exposure just informs you. You have a risk. You might have an issue. Dosage, on the other hand, is a bit more distinct. Knowing the exact dosage means you can foresee the future for your health. Maybe. Because there's other things going on. It's just never that easy. By the nature of radiation exposure, it's very easy to find out about the exposure and learn nothing about the dosage. And this is hard to comprehend. The dosage requires internal medicine, internal studies, and looking for the cause instead of a cure to try to prevent needing so many cures that are so expensive, so hard on families. This is pollution overall, but radiation has this unique measurement challenge in how to relate a measurement from an instrument to a dose in a person, the effects in the person. This is such a nuanced conversation. Look at what the CDC is going through for COVID. We can prove COVID-19 in so many ways. We know it's there, it's a risk. The exposure pathways are basically through the air. And it's changing because we're feeding it by not responding and reacting to it, not wearing a mask. We're allowing it to try to do whatever COVIDs do. So this exposure, this fact that you are exposed, just informs you. And this comes to institutions, trusted institutions that worry over these things because there is so much to it. How do you find that trust? Exposure versus dose. It can be a loose conversation that doesn't lead very far, or it could be a very detailed education in how dosimetry works. So, is what it is. Peace out. It's hard to have these conversations in today's politics when there is so much noise in the pipeline, so many disparate concerns over the future of politics itself. So the pollution goes on. Our politics hides the pollution, defers the conversation to the next generation. That's life.